Hey friends, welcome back to the channel and welcome to another old school April themed video. So we're gearing up seriously for old school April here, and if you haven't heard, I am one of the co-hosts of this read and watch-a-thon that's going to be taking place all April long. So I'm gonna have a whole bunch of information linked down below, and also make sure you're following the other co-hosts for this read and watch-a-thon. And Kelsey from Slime and Slashers is kind of the den mother, the mother hen of this whole thing, so this is her baby. So make sure you go over and watch Kelsey's old school April videos as well. She's put together a whole slew of stuff, from, you know, the prompts, how the stuff works, all the things. And if you don't know already, this is a team event. So like I said, I'm one of the co-hosts, and you can go ahead and join one of the teams. So each team, I believe, has either 4 or 3 hosts, and you can go ahead and join the teams, get on the Discord channel, get on the Instagram channel for Old School April. So this is kicking off big time, and I'm super excited. So I hope you guys are going to enjoy the video. So in this video, I'm going to be going through everything that I plan on reading and watching during the month of April for this event. And I also have a whole bunch of suggestions for you guys. So this is going to be my to be read list, my to be watch list, and a bunch of other suggestions. And all of these books and movies that I'm going to suggest, I've either read, am going to read, or have already watched or am going to watch. So I wanted to make sure to recommend things that I personally love myself, and I also wanted to put a little bit of a Canadian flair in here. So there's lots of Canadian choices, and we had amazing TV shows and movies and everything. They're wonderfully cheesy when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s here in Canada, so I wanted to call out some of those as well. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right into the list here, because this is going to be a pretty long video, I think. I am going to have some timestamps linked down below if you want to skip ahead, or you just want to do the suggestions or whatever. So in this video, like I said, I'm going to have my to be read list, my to be watch list, some suggestions, but I'm not going to be going over any of the bonus prompts. So there are, I believe, 10 book prompts, 10 watch prompts, and then there's a whole slew, like 20 or 25 bonus prompts. So the way I'm going to do those is I'm going to have a link down below to all of the bonus prompts, and I'm going to be doing those in some of my themed vlogs throughout the month of April. The other thing that's going to be happening in the month of April is I'm going to try my best to have some live events on the channel here. I am planning on doing some live hangouts and some sprints and stuff like that. I am off for a week from work during April, so probably during that week. So hopefully I can get all of that to work, and hopefully you guys will be available to come to 1 or 2 of the hangouts. And also, like I said, with the other hosts as well, we're doing watch parties, reading parties, slumber parties, all sorts of things. So keep an eye on the Instagram page and the Discord channel for all of the details. So starting off, of course, with the reading prompts, because this is primarily a readathon. So prompt number 1 is very easy. Read a Goosebumps book or a book themed around Are You Afraid of the Dark episode. So for me, I am planning on reading a Goosebumps book, so I picked this one, Monster Blood. So this is Goosebumps number 3, and I can't remember anything from this one when I was a kid. I know I read it, but I can't remember any of it. So super looking forward to this. And I mean, it's short. So these read and watch-a-thons and everything, not only can you fill up your stuff with short reads, you can also use your reading prompts for short stories. And you know, so you make sure you fulfill all the prompts. The other thing is you can do one book for multiple prompts. So like this book would fit in for several of the prompts. So if you are taking part in this, make sure that you're trying to pick things that will double or triple your points. And there are links to all of the Google spreadsheets and all of that you can tabulate your points and make sure you submit them for your team. So getting back to the books, I am planning on reading this particular Goosebumps, and I also read a couple of Goosebumps last year. I read Welcome to Dead House, I read Camp Jelly Jam, and I read Ghost Beach. And I really enjoyed all of them, but if I had to pick one, the horror at Camp Jelly Jam is probably my absolute favorite that I've read so far. I think that is my favorite Goosebumps. And then of course you have the normal, really classic ones like The Haunted Mask and those types. So Goosebumps, I believe, has about 64, 65 in the original series. So this is going to be great. I can sit down with it, you know, in an afternoon or an evening and read through it, and I'm sure this is going to be tons and tons of cheesy fun. And then the second part of the prompt, like I said, is to read a book that fits in or is themed around an Are You Afraid of the Dark episode. So I do have a suggestion for that. So The Time Watchers by Robbie Miles is a book I read last year, and I immediately thought of the season 3 episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark. It's called The Tale of Watcher's Woods, and this, I think Robbie even said that he took some inspiration from that as well, very loosely, to put into his book, because he's also a huge Goosebumps, vintage horror, Are You Afraid of the Dark fan. So this book is absolutely fantastic. Love this. And another episode that I love from the very first season, I think it's within the very first like 5 or 6 episodes, it's The Tale of the Lonely Ghost, and that is one of my favorites, and it's based around like a haunted house, creepy child kind of story going on. So I mean, you could read any haunted house book, any creepy sort of ghost child's book if you wanted there. There's another one, I believe it's called The Tale of the Prom Queen. That one is one of my favorite episodes as well. So you could read, like there's a Fear Street called The Prom Queen, or anything that kind of fits in there. So make sure you go over and check Kelsey's list, because she has an exhaustive list of everything that you could kind of wrap in around an Are You Afraid of the Dark episode. And then prompt number 2, and like I said in my announcement video as well, these prompts are so broad and so wide that there's a ton of stuff that could fit into these prompts. Of course, my choices aren't the only choices you could choose, or Kelsey's aren't the only choices you could choose, or any of the other hosts. So this one is read any horror book published or set in the 80s, or a middle grade or YA horror book published or set in the 80s, or a book with a retro vibe. So for this one, I chose Pet Sematary by Stephen King, and of course the book and movie are both classics, right? I mean, Stephen King, of course, is the king of horror, and but I've never read Pet Sematary. And one thing that I really wanted to start doing this year, and specifically for Old School April, is doing a read the book, watch the movie kind of comparison, sort of maybe wrap it into a vlog. And so I've always wanted to read the book. I've heard it's fantastic, and it goes really deep into, you know, the grief of what happened in the movie a little bit more, and the family dynamics and all of that. So really super excited to read this. And my husband Matthew enjoys classic horror, so I'll read the book, we'll watch the movie together, and then I'll do an analysis for you guys. So that's one of my choices. And then if I have time, I would also like to get to this one. This is Amityville 2: The Possession. It's also known as Murder in Amityville by Hans Holzer. And it says on the front, the true story behind the sensational and horrifying new motion picture. And so really wanted to pick this one up. I believe this one came out in '82. I believe this is my birth year book. So that's great. And we can also watch the movie as well. So I thought that was a really cool tie-in. So I'll do that one as well and report back to you guys on my thoughts. So hoping to get to as many books as possible, but Pet Sematary is my first choice. This one is my second choice. And then a couple of other suggestions for you guys. So Audrey Rose is a really good one. Misery by Stephen King. My husband has really been wanting to watch the movie, so I told him I need to read the book first and then we'll watch the movie together. And Pet Sematary, of course, which is the one that I'm reading. The Dark Half by Stephen King is one that I will not be reading because both the book and the movie scared the bejesus out of me when I was a teenager. I don't think I slept for 2 weeks after attempting to read this book and watch the movie. So that's another good one though, a classic. The Mummy or Ramses the Damned by Anne Rice. That's a really good one as well. And then if we're talking about newer books with a vintage vibe, we have Fat Camp by James Sabata. This is one of my favorite books of all time. It was one of my top books of 2021. Kill River by Cameron Robique. My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix, of course. This is a wonderful vintage, newer aged book. And then a book that I'm reading right now is called Tastes Like Candy. And doesn't this cover look absolutely wonderful? So this actually takes place in 2020, but it's kind of themed around sort of that 80s, 90s slasher, and I'm really enjoying that one. It's a carnival theme, and it has absolutely brutal kills in there, and it's kind of funny as well. So there you go, there's some suggestions for you. So for myself, I'm planning on reading Pet Sematary, at the Amityville Horror 2, or Murder in Amityville by Hans Holzer, and possibly, maybe, I don't think, but I'm going to try to get to it, Misery by Stephen King. Now the next one is kind of funny. I was racking my brain to figure out what I was going to do with this one, and then I saw Alex over at the Bookubus talking about this particular prompt as well, and neither one of us are into animal attack horror. So prompt number 3 is read an animal attack story. It's just not my thing. I don't think I've ever read an animal attack story. I was racking my brain, I couldn't think of it. The only thing I can probably recommend to you is Jaws, which is a book that I actually haven't read. I've watched the movie, of course, haven't read the book. So I'm just gonna do the exact same thing that Alex did and say, I don't really have anything for you guys for this prompt, but Kelsey, of course, loves animal attack stories, so she has lots of stuff over on her channel, and of course, check out the other host channels as well. And then prompt number 4, nostalgic technology. Read a book featuring older technology on the cover or as part of the story. So my choice for this is Master of Murder by Christopher Pike. You all know that Christopher Pike was my favorite author growing up. And so this has a really old style computer on the front of it here. And this is all embossed. It's wonderful. And it says, he wrote about his own murder. So really looking forward to this. I knew I wanted to read more Christopher Pike this year. And this is one that I didn't read when I was a kid. So I did read a fair amount of Pike, but I didn't read this one. So this one's going to be new to me. So this has really old school computer on the front here. You can even see that there's kind of like almost looks like a phone cord going from the computer to the keyboard. So that's it's kind of funny when you see those kinds of things on the covers here. So this is my first choice, and then I do have a second choice that's been on my shelf for quite some time, and it's this one. It's called Deadhead by Sean Hudson, and as you can see down on the floor here, it does have a VHS tape in a puddle of blood here. So that's really cool. So I might try to get to this one. It's a little bit more chunky and the text is a little bit tiny, so we'll see how this one goes, and because I have a ton of books and movies to get through this month, but I do have this one as a second choice if I get through the other one really quickly. And then some other suggestions. We have Dead Daughters by Tim Meyer, so it has kind of like a Polaroid picture on the front cover here. Twisted Tainted Tales by Janine Pipe. The whole book is meant to look like a VHS case. And My Best Friend's Exorcism, again here by Grady Hendrix, can work. So this as well also very much looks like a VHS case. And the story itself obviously has a retro vibe. So again, you can choose one book for multiple prompts for this. Make sure you're getting all of your points. So like, for example, this particular one, Master of Murder, that I'm looking to read, so it can work for the nostalgic technology on the cover, it can work for neon on the cover, and most of Pike's books are neon, and there is a prompt for reading a Christopher Pike book. So in this case, it can work for 3, and actually there's a prompt for read a horror book from the 90s. So like up to 4 or 5 prompts this particular book can work for. So make sure you're getting all of your points for each one of your books. And then prompt number 5, we have a mood read, which is awesome. So read any book published or set in the year 2003 or earlier. So anything at all you want to pick up and read would work for the prompt. That's as long as it's before 2003. It also doesn't have to be horror. So of course, most of the books that we're going to be picking here between the hosts are going to be horror books, but you can read outside of horror as well. So for myself, I'm planning on reading out of Night Shift by Stephen King. I'm planning on reading Children of the Corn because I've been wanting to watch the movie, and my husband's been wanting to watch the movie as well. So I'm planning on reading the story and then watching the movie, and then, you know, I might read some other things out of here. I'm not really too sure, but I also do have another one for this prompt. I've been wanting to pick up The Exorcist. So this I thought would be perfect for our mood read as well. And I do have 2 copies of The Exorcist, so this is my vintage copy. I have a newer copy, and I also have an audiobook of The Exorcist as well. So I've just been dying to read this because of course, like most people, I've watched the movie 100 times, never read the book. So I definitely want to read this and then watch the movie as well with my husband, and I'll come back and do a comparison for you guys. So that's my 2 choices for mood reads. So Children of the Corn out of Night Shift by Stephen King and The Exorcist. And of course, I'm not going to give you guys any suggestions for this prompt because it's pretty much open for anything. And then prompt number 6, another huge category. So read a Fear Street, point horror, or Christopher Pike book. So I mean, these particular series are humongous. I mean, I don't even know how many point horror books there are. There's 70 or 80 Fear Street books, and you also have Nightmare Hall, which is a spin-off from the point horror, but it's still within the point horror universe, so I would still suggest that those would probably fit in here. And Christopher Pike's books as well are very, very wide-ranging. He has a ton, so lots and lots of choices here. But the one that I'm going to read, so this is going to be a reread for me. This is Fall into Darkness by Christopher Pike, and it says in the front, she fell forever and never hit the ground. And so I can't remember a whole lot about this from my childhood. I know I liked it, I just can't remember a whole lot from it. So that's the one that I'm planning on reading. And there is a made-for-TV movie from 1996 with Tatiana Ali and Jonathan Brandis that are in it. I only just recently found that out, maybe a couple of weeks ago, and I had no idea. So I'm gonna read the book and watch the movie, which it will fit in with some of the watch prompts as well. So this is my choice. I'm going to be picking up a Christopher Pike book, and then this would fit in as well. So this is my host recommendation book. So Witch by Christopher Pike, you guys know this is one of my favorite books ever, and so this would also fit in for a lot of the prompts. So this would definitely fit in here to the Christopher Pike prompt, and it fits a lot of the other reading prompts as well. So when it will fit in, I'm going to suggest it to you guys, and then one of the bonus prompts is also read a host recommended book. So this one would fit in for a ton of the prompts also. And then for some other recommendations, so I just mentioned Witch by Christopher Pike. We also have Bury Me Deep and The Midnight Club, which are some of my favorite Christopher Pike books. We also have The Sleepwalker, which is part of the Nightmare Hall point horror spin-off. That was one of my books that was a favorite when I was growing up. And we also have The Overnight, which is my favorite Fear Street book. So I read this one last year and absolutely loved it. So I think that one so far has to be my favorite Fear Street. So there's a couple of suggestions. I love this prompt because it includes all 3 of the major horror series from that time. And like I said, it's so vast, it's so wide-ranging that you'll be able to find something for sure. And then prompt number 7 is Teen Witch. Read a book with magic, magical elements, magical items, wizards, sorcerers, witches, cursed objects, occult, supernatural elements. So another very, very wide-ranging prompt here. So anything basically with magical, fantastical, or occult elements would work for this prompt. So the one that I picked, and I've been waiting the past couple of years to pick up this book. So this is Rosemary's Baby by Ira Levin, another one that I want to read the book and watch the movie. And this also comes as a host recommended book as well. So this particular copy is from 1968, and it's got wonderful, like, these turquoise sprayed edges, and then it's the movie tie-in version. So it has a picture of Mia Farrow on the back, and I just love this. I've actually never seen it, I've never watched it. I know, you know, the basic premise of the story, but it's just something I've never picked up before, which is really, really strange because I love classic horror. So that's my pick. So that's, of course, with the occult tie-in. And then another couple of suggestions here. We have A Head Full of Ghosts. So this is a book that is very well loved, but it's something that I personally did not enjoy, by Paul Tremblay. So you can always pick this one up. Witch by Christopher Pike would work here as well. Maggie's Grave by David Sodergren is one that I've read recently that I really loved. The Devil's Mistress by David Barclay is another one that would fit in here. Any of the Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings type books would fit in here as well, with magical elements and magical objects. Cursed Objects and Season with the Witch by J.W. Ocker would fit in here really, really well. And my personal favorite, Lily, Willy, and the Mail Order Witch. So this is a children's book from the 1970s that would fit this prompt beautifully, and it's also available on Audible. It only takes about 45 minutes to listen to, and it'll just give you all the warm fuzzies. And then going on to prompt number 8, so read any horror book published in the 90s, or read a middle grade or YA book published or set in the 90s, or a book with a retro vibe. So for my choice, I picked Phone Calls by R.L. Stine. So this is R.L. Stine outside of the horror genre. It sounds like a super, super cheesy book. This is from 1990, and I recently ordered this one just before the holidays. And I've been dying to read it because I just want all of the wonderful, horrible cheese from the early 90s that would be part of this book. And it just sounds fantastic. So it says, when 4 teens get their wires crossed, they dial trouble. So it's gonna be really, really good. So that's my choice, and then a couple of suggestions for you guys. So we have the Mina book series by Amy McCaw. This is wonderful. It's set in the 90s, and it has all of the Buffy the Vampire Slayer sort of vibes. The Creepover series is one that I've been enjoying recently, and this has some retro vibes with girls at a sleepover. The Face on the Milk Carton by Caroline B. Cooney is one of my favorites when I was growing up. And then of course we have lots of books from the Babysitters Club, the Cheerleaders series. Sweet Valley I think is mostly in the 80s, but I think delves into the 90s. And then of course you have all of the Christopher Pike, the Fear Street, Goosebumps, all of those, or most of those, were written in the 90s. So you could do a crossover choice there. I mean, the options are endless. And here, actually, I'm seeing these. So we're going to talk about Buffy in a second. I've got my Buffy earrings in. Most of the Buffy books were written in the 90s, so all of those will be wonderful, wonderful choices. And then of course I have to take the opportunity to mention Paperback Crush, which is a book about books from the 90s. So this is basically a book that reminisces about all of the wonderful middle grade and YA girls series from that particular period, and the whole thing just made me smile from beginning to end, so that one would fit in here perfectly as well. And then number 9 is the Buffy prompt. So we have Buffy the Vampire Slayer, read a story with a female protagonist or written by a woman. So my choice is an actual Buffy book. So I picked up The Harvest. And this is one of the earlier ones. It says, school's out, evil is in. It's super, super short. And I have, I think, 4 or 5 out of this Brown series here. So I really wanted to dive into an actual Buffy book for this prompt because my collection has been getting so big over the past few months. Of course, I had a huge package come in the mail just before the holidays that was full of Buffy books. There is the In Every Generation series, and then of course the Mina books would fit in here as well. And this is another opportunity where I'm going to talk about Witch by Christopher Pike, because this has a strong female protagonist in it. So Julie, the main character, is a strong female protagonist, and she is also a witch. So this could work for that prompt with all of the magical elements, witches, wizards, all of that sort of thing. So this book is great for ticking off some of those prompts. So again, I'm going to mention this one because I don't think you guys should miss it. And then for a couple of other suggestions, we have Goddess of Filth by V. Castro. So this is a wonderful feminist sort of book. The Trick or Treater by Brianna Morgan. Brianna Morgan is one of my favorite female authors. She writes fantastic stories. And The Babysitter's Coven is one that I read last year as well, that it not only has a retro vibe and it makes me smile, the language is fantastic, but it also has strong female protagonists there as well. And then for the bonus reading prompt, read a book with neon on the cover. So as you've seen, there's tons and tons of books out there that have neon on the cover. So for my choice, I'm actually picking a book that's written recently. So this is a new book with a retro vibe. So my choice is Hall of Mirrors by Charles Ashe, and the author very kindly sent me an e-copy for review. And that was a couple of months ago, and I knew that Old School April was coming up, and I knew that this was going to be perfect for some of these prompts. So that's the reason why I waited, and I can't wait to read it because I know a couple of people on BookTube have read it already and said it was fantastic, and I know it's going to have all of those wonderful vibes of like the Christopher Pikes and the Fear Streets and everything from the 90s. So a couple of other choices here. Any Christopher Pike would work. Just about all of the Christopher Pike books have neon covers. Any of the Nightmare Hallwood work, they have neon on the cover. Tastes Like Candy is one that I'll mention here again that I'm currently reading and I'm really enjoying it. And Meddling Kids by Edgar Cantero. This is a book I actually haven't read yet, and I know I said I wanted to stick with books that I have read, but this just has such a wonderful neon cover. I love the cover on it, and it also has sort of a Scooby-Doo sort of vibe, so that's fantastic, and I thought this would fit in here perfectly. So there you guys go. Those are all of the reading prompts so far, and we're gonna hop into the watch-a-thon prompts next. So personally, I lived for movies when I was growing up. I'm still a huge movie buff, so I have a whole slew of movies and shows that I wanted to suggest to you guys, and this is where I've looped in some of those retro sort of Canadian shows as well. So if you guys wanted to check out some cheesy vintage Canadian TV, most of these episodes and some of the movies and stuff, you can get them off of YouTube for free, or you can go ahead and download it from iTunes or whatever. So prompt number 1, again here, very wide, it is watch a Goosebumps episode. So of course Goosebumps ran for a pretty long time, and I'm not quite sure which one I'm going to watch yet, but I do have a couple of DVDs that have like 3 or 4 of the episodes on them, so I'm probably going to watch one of those. And of course you can also find the Goosebumps episodes, I'm pretty sure, still on Netflix. I know you guys in the States still have it on Netflix, but I'm not sure here in Canada. I'm assuming they're still available there. And then prompt number 2, we have watch any 80s horror movie. So, I mean, like I said, very wide ranging. So for myself, I'm going to watch Sleepaway Camp. It is something that I know about the story. I've seen bits and pieces of it. I've never seen the entire movie from beginning to end, so I'm planning on watching this one. It's going to be fantastic, and I think Matthew's really going to enjoy it as well, because we love those cheesy horror movies. And then a couple of other suggestions for you guys. Poltergeist from 1982. This is one of my favorite movies of all time. We watched it a few weeks ago again. It's just, I love it so much. Slumber Party Massacre was one that I watched last year, and it's super cheesy, just loved it. Prom Night, Pet Sematary, I'm planning on watching. Like I said, I'm reading the book, so I'm going to be watching the movie as well. The Shining, The Lost Boys, Gremlins, Fright Night, The Changeling, and Child's Play. So I rewatched the first 2 Chucky movies, I think, last year, and they were great. So just wanted to give you guys a couple of suggestions if there's any on that list that you haven't seen. I would highly recommend watching The Changeling if you haven't seen that one. You can get it here on YouTube, which is great, and it's spooky and creepy in its own way, and it's wonderful. Prompt number 3, watch an episode of any 90s Nickelodeon show or watch a Nickelodeon movie. And for me, one of my favorite Nickelodeon shows growing up was The Secret World of Alex Mack, so I'm planning on watching a few episodes of that, and it's one that I would highly recommend. Some other suggestions for you guys are The Wild Thornberrys, Doug, Rugrats, Ren and Stimpy, and Hey Arnold. And then of course, for Nickelodeon movies, Harriet the Spy is a wonderful choice, and Good Burger, which I believe is on one of the host recommended movies. I haven't seen it for years and years, and it's something that I want to watch as well again. So. And prompt number 4, watch any movie, TV show set in the 80s or 90s, or watch a newer adaptation of an old school movie, show, or book. So this one can be a bit of a tongue twister, but essentially you can watch any movie or a TV show from the 80s or 90s, or something that's a newer adaptation of something that took place during that period. So my choice is my host recommended choice, Troop Beverly Hills. I love that movie so much. It's just got all the 80s wonderfulness, and I hope you guys are planning on picking it up too. It's simply fantastic. And of course we have some other suggestions here, like Stranger Things, which took place in the 80s, Scooby-Doo, so you can watch the newer movie adaptations. The new Fear Street series of movies on Netflix would work here. Casper, The Never-Ending Story, and one of my favorites when I was growing up is called Mac and Me, and it's a knockoff of E.T. And I actually never watched E.T. when I was growing up. I never watched it till I was an adult, but Mac and Me was the one that we taped off of television onto VHS, and I watched it, I don't know, hundreds of times. So I'm planning on watching that one again if I can find it somewhere. And then number 5, so here's our mood watch. So basically anything that came out before the year 2003. So you know, massive suggestions here. So my choice, of course, are Rosemary's Baby and The Exorcist. I'm planning on watching both. Ghost Ship is one of my favorite movies of all time. It has one of the best horror movie openings of all time, in my opinion. Willow is a good one. Tremors is one of my husband's favorite movies. The Hand That Rocks the Cradle was really big when I was growing up. Candyman, Village of the Damned, Children of the Corn, which I'm also planning on watching, and The Flight of Dragons, which I'm also planning on watching, and is my host choice movie. So this is very underappreciated in my opinion. I love this movie. It's an old cartoon and it's just simply fantastic. Prompt number 6, watch an episode of any Disney Channel show or any Disney Channel original movie from the 90s or early 2000s. So for me, I'm planning on watching Under Wraps. This is one that's on Disney Plus and I've never seen it. We have Halloween Town, which is perfect if you're also celebrating halfway to Halloween, which I am during April. Xenon, Mom's Got a Date with a Vampire, The Phantom of the Megaplex, Cadet Kelly, which is another one I'm planning on watching, or The Scream Team. So tons of Disney Channel original movies. I love the Disney Channel. It's fantastic. A lot of the movies are super cheesy, but they're just wonderful, aren't they? And then for Disney Channel original TV shows, we have Flash Forward, which I'm going to see if I can find some episodes of. This was one of my favorite shows when I was growing up. The show So Weird started in the 90s, so you can check out the early episodes. Bug Juice, Even Stevens, or Lizzie McGuire, again with the earlier episodes because this does run through, but if you get the earlier episodes, it will fill the prompt. Number 7, watch any 80s movie or TV episode. So again, very wide here. So the one that I'm picking is a Canadian favorite and it's called The Raccoons. And this was a show that came out in the 80s in Canada, and I'm pretty sure every Canadian kid watched this show. So I'm going to be watching The Raccoons. We also have Fraggle Rock, The Storyteller, Growing Pains, Gimme a Break. And for movies, we have The Never-Ending Story, which I'm planning on watching, The Dark Crystal, Labyrinth, which I'm planning on watching, Return to Oz, which is a favorite of mine, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and The Little Vampire. So The Little Vampire, or Der kleine Vampire, is a German-Canadian television show that came out during this period, and it's simply wonderful. It's so cheesy, but it's about a child vampire who's like 146 years old, and he befriends a human boy, which is not supposed to do, but they do anyway, and they get into all sorts of shenanigans, and there's a vampire hunter that's out after them, and it's just a wonderful adventure. And you can find episodes of this on YouTube, so I would highly suggest checking that out. So prompt number 8, watch any 90s horror movie. So this, of course, is my time because I was, you know, in my mid to late teens in the 90s. So of course we have our classic 90s horror movies like Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer. One of my favorites is People Under the Stairs, Sleepy Hollow, The Haunting, the original Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie, which I watched over and over again back in the 90s. The Witches, which is something that I watched back in the day and it scared the bejeepers out of me when I was a kid. Misery is one that I'm planning on watching if I can get through the book. The Ice Cream Man, and Stir of Echoes. It's another one that I would really like to watch. I believe we own it. I've got to go double check, but I would like to watch that one as well. And number 9, watch any 90s movie or TV episode. So again, very wide ranging. So my choice movie that I picked was Challengers, which is another 90s Canadian like made for TV movie. You can find it on YouTube here. So I'm so excited to watch this movie because I loved, whenever it came on TV, I watched it and I absolutely loved it. And a couple of other suggestions for you guys: The Sandlot, which is a favorite, Interview with the Vampire, The Secret Garden, which is a favorite, Look Who's Talking 2. So this is something where you could watch the original Look Who's Talking from the 80s and then watch this one from the 90s. Problem Child is another one that's a favorite, The Page Master, Newsies, which is a musical. It's a Disney musical and I love it. Hook, or Matilda. Matilda is another one that I loved when I was growing up. And then from TV shows, so the show that I picked from the 90s is a Canadian show called Maniac Mansion. It was created by Eugene Levy. Not a whole lot of people remember it, but I remember it and it was hilarious and so out there. It was just so far out there. So I'd recommend watching that one. You could probably find episodes here on YouTube for that. Erie, Indiana is another good one. Charmed, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, of course, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, Boy Meets World, Family Matters, which is from the TGIF lineup. The early episodes are from the 80s, but it does run into the 90s. Empty Nest, which started in the 80s, but the later episodes ran into the 90s. And ER was one that I always watched on Thursday nights. It was huge when I was growing up, so I always watched that one as well. So there you guys go. I think this video is long enough. Those are all of the reading and watching prompts. So I've given you guys kind of what I'm planning on reading and watching, and a whole slew of other suggestions that are based on my own personal favorites. And of course, like I said, there are a whole ton of other bonus prompts for this read and watch-a-thon, but I'm not going to go through those in this video. It's just going to be too long. But all of those will likely be wrapped into my vlogs as I go throughout the month. So I hope you guys are excited. I hope you guys are going to take part. Remember to go check out Kelsey's original video. She has all of the stuff listed in the description box on her channel. And then of course there's a crap ton of stuff on the Discord server, on the Instagram channel, on all of our Instagram channels. And of course, if you have any questions, you can leave me a comment down below and just ask. So again, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, give me a thumbs up. Leave me a question or comment down below because you know I love chatting with you guys. But until next time, stay spooky, everybody. Bye.